Good morning, everyone. This is Parsha class on Thursday morning in Modi'in. Parsha's Behar, Bechukosai. I want to speak a little bit about this week's Parsha, and I want to talk also about Shavuos. Everybody knows the famous Gemara that God went around to all the nations of the world and asked them if they wanted to take the Torah. And each nation asked them, "My Kosova, what does it say inside the Torah?" God says to the one nation, he says to each one specifically what their Achilles heel is, their weakest part of them. So to the nation, to Ishmael, so he says to them, it says, lo signov, that you can't steal. And to Esav, which is a nation of murderers, he says to them, lo tirtzach, that you can't kill. Now, if God wanted to convince them to keep the Torah, why would he tell them that part first? Tell them you get to eat cholent and you have kishka on Shabbos and and the food is amazing. And also, by the way, Judaism, it's all about meals. It's all about food. Even when you're fasting, you have to eat before the fast. And if you eat before the fast, it's like you fasted on 2 days. It's great. It's all built around food and drink. And then, by the way, you shouldn't steal. At that point, by the time you told them all the great stuff, so then, okay, fine, you can't steal. They would have accepted it. Why, if God wanted them to accept the Torah, did he specifically say to the nation that had a hard time with stealing, you can't steal? And to the nation that had a hard time with killing, oh, you can't kill. But there's actually a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that this doesn't really make any sense. Because at the end of the day, they already had these mitzvahs. They already couldn't kill, and they already couldn't steal, and they already couldn't commit adultery because of the Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach, because of the 7 Noachide laws. So what exactly was this adding into it? There was, and then they said, oh, sorry, because it says that we can't take the Torah. When we can't take the Torah, you already have that commandment. They can't really reject it. They had it already, and they accepted it. So what was going on over here? That God is saying to them, you can't kill, and they were saying, oh, we can't take the Torah because because it says you can't kill. Yeah, thank you very much, but you already can't kill, not because it says in Torah. For them, they already can't kill because it's in the Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach, the 7 Noachide laws. That's problem number one. Problem number two: there's no real symbol for Shavuos. Cheesecake, by the way, is not a symbol, right? We don't have. There's no real symbol for Shavuos. There's a big symbols for Pesach, big symbols for Sukkot, but nothing for Shavuos. Why Shavuos? There's no symbol. Shavuos also, on some level, doesn't really have a name. The real name of Shavuos, which is Zman Matan Torah, Chag Matan Torah, was not mentioned in the Torah at all. So why is that? Why is it that way? That there's no real name? There's a machlokes. My fourth problem is that there's a machlokes how to observe Yontif. Whether we observe Yontif in general by kulo l'Hashem, by completely giving ourselves over to God, sitting and learning Torah, rejoicing, saying piyutim, doing all that kind of stuff, davening, or whether we rejoice on Yontif kulo l'Hashem, that it's completely about joy and happiness, about drinking, about eating, about celebrating, about family, about community. So there is this difference of opinion in the Talmud. Rabbi Elazar says that on Shavuos, you would imagine that day is Kulei Lashem. If you had to choose one day to be completely God's, it would be Shavuos. Because on Shavuos, we got the Torah, and therefore spend the day learning Torah, spend the day making all kinds of systems of symbolisms and the way we remember the giving of the Torah, eat foods that are symbolic of the Torah. Right? I'm not eat foods, I'm sorry. So just do all kinds of spiritual things, all kinds of religious things that remind us of the giving of the Torah. You would imagine that it should be a day of Kulei Lashem. But our rabbis tell us that day, everybody knows for sure, on that day, even if you wanted to do a large component, l'Hashem, to God, revolving around spirituality, revolving around the giving of the Torah, there still must be a component of kulai, there needs to be also a component for you, for rejoicing, for eating, for drinking, for physical pleasure and physical enjoyment in order to be able to celebrate the holiday. It just seems so at odds with the message of the holiday that we're worried about spirituality, not about materialism. Why would there need to be this material, physical component of the celebration of the holiday? And the truth is, this is true for Shabbos and Purim also. What's the connection between Shabbos and Purim and Shavuos? My sixth problem is looking at the Parsha. This Parsha is called it's Parsha's Behar Bechukosai, and Bechukosai is one of the two curses that are leveled at the Jewish people in the Torah. One is written here in Bechukosai, one of them is written later in Devarim and Parshas Kisavo. One of them is read right before Shavuos, which Shavuos on some level is considered a Rosh Hashanah, one of the Rosh Hashanahs of the year. And right before that Rosh Hashanah, we read the curses, and then right before Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, so then Parshas Kisavo, which comes a few weeks right before Rosh Hashanah, we read there the curses. And our rabbis tell us that the reason that we read the curses before these two Rosh Hashanah is because Shetichla Shana v'Kilasau, that let the year end and go away and take away the curses with it and start afresh. So what is that concept? Shetichla Shana v'Kilasau. I mean, it sounds almost like a little superstitious. Like, what are we doing? My seventh problem is, why is this called the Tochacha, which is really the bracha v'klala, the blessing and the curse? If you look at the Parsha, it says, Im Bechukosai telechu, if you walk in my ways, and then it tells me a litany of blessings that I'm going to receive if I walk in God's ways and I follow his Torah. And then if I disconnect myself from Torah and I'm not engaged in Torah, so then it tells me about 7 stages of terrible, horrific things that can happen to me. It sounds much more like that Parsha should be called, that section of the Torah should be called Schar v'Onish, reward and punishment, not bracha and klala, blessing and cursing. What's the difference between schar va'onesh, between reward and punishment, and bracha and klala, and blessing and cursing? And that it's so important that we recognize that what's being leveled at us in this Parsha is not schar va'onesh, but specifically bracha v'klala. So to understand this, we really need to understand what's the difference between schar and onesh, reward and punishment, and bracha and klala. See, schar and onesh, reward and punishment, is for what a person does. You do good things, you get rewarded. You do bad things, you're punished. But our feeling towards the person doesn't change. Our kids do something bad. They're not bad people. They've done something bad. We have to punish them because we need to teach them not to do that. But I don't hate them because they've done something bad. And I don't love them more and shouldn't love them more when they do something good. I reward them for what they've done. Reward and punishment is because of what we do. But bracha and klala, blessing and curse, that's really about acceptance or rejection. Bracha means to reconnect. That when God blesses us, he reconnects with us. He increases our lives. He puts something additional into our lives that brings us closer to him. And when we are cursed, so then we're disconnected. We're severed. We're cut off. What justifies a bracha and a klala? A reconnection or a disconnection? When we do good, we get rewarded and punished. But when we become something good, when we change our character, when we become better people, not just do better things, so then my relationship with God intensifies. And when we become something evil, not merely doing something evil, but that's who we become, then my relationship is severed and I become disconnected. When a person changes their actions, so then my feelings don't change. But when their character changes, when their very essence and nature changes, then my feelings for that person also change. Acceptance or rejection, bracha and klala, is all about the character. It's all about who we are and what we become, as opposed to what we do. There is a great difference between a change in our actions and a change in our madrega, in our level, in our characters. That's why the Teichacha, this section of the Torah, of the blessings and the curses, is called blessings and curses, not schar v'oinish, not reward and punishment. Because it's not just about what we do. The covenant at Mount Sinai, that bris that God made with the Jewish people, wasn't just that we would keep his commandments, but that we would allow those commandments to change our character. We would, by keeping that bris, by keeping that covenant, we would be closer and we would be reconnected with God. Sinai was the expectation that we would change our character. And if that's what Torah is about, Torah is not about doing, it's about becoming. Now we can understand everything that we questioned. Because that's the difference between our Torah and the Zion Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 Noachide laws. The 7 Noachide laws are commandments. Nowhere to the 7 Noachide laws is there an expectation that they change their character, that they become more sensitive. They can't steal. They can't commit adultery. They can't kill. They have to follow the law. See, when God comes to us and he says, don't steal, he doesn't just mean don't steal. He means become sensitive to other people's space. Become sensitive to who other people are. Don't misrepresent yourself so you steal somebody's mind. Don't wake somebody up when they're sleeping so that you steal their sleep. Become sensitive. When it says don't kill, it doesn't mean merely just don't kill, don't shoot another person. Don't kill means don't take away their dignity. Don't shame them in public and you steal from them. You destroy their entire sense of self. When you embarrass somebody in public, Kilu Hargo, it's like you kill them because you take away their whole sense of who they are. When God went to the nations of the world, he was asking them to take the Torah, not the 7 Noachide laws. Those were accepted already, the rules they got. But now God wanted to confer the lifestyle on them. And the lifestyle they weren't interested in taking. They were willing to accept mitzvos as actions, but not as character traits. And for us, the Torah expresses our real ratzon, our real desire of who we really are inside. And what the Torah does by commanding us and obligating us to do these things, the doing of these things brings out of us the very essence of who we are and the very essence of who we want to be. When, God forbid, a person doesn't want to give a get, there is a certain kind of system that we can do where we can pressure the person. Kofen also, we press him to the point. Shomer Rotzani, that he says, I want to do this. So Rabbi say, wait a second, but that's forcing him, and a forced get is not kosher. Now, Rabbis explain, you're not forcing him. What you're doing is you are opening his eyes and making him realize, Kofen so you're putting pressure on him that he can realize, Rotzani, this is what I really want. And that's what the Torah does for us. The Torah doesn't just obligate us to do. The Torah presses us to become the incredible people that we have the potential of becoming. That's the whole tachlis of the Torah. The whole purpose of the Torah is to develop me into a person who just wants to do the right thing. That's why on Shavuos, I have to have Chatzinami Lochem. It has to be a celebration, not just spiritually talking about the mitzvos and what we do, but we have to celebrate, not just celebrate the rules, but celebrate the vehicle that changes my character. Rav Sheshes every 30 days would stand by the door of his house and he would say, finish all of his learning. He would review everything he learned. And then he would say, Chadoi nafshoi, Chadoi nafshoi. My soul is overjoyed. The word Chadoi is from the word happiness, but it's also from the word Chad, one. Because what Rav Sheshes was saying once a month, as if he was paying his rent, justifying his existence in this world, and therefore he stood by the doorway of his house. Chadoi nafshoi, Chadoi nafshoi. I'm happy because what I want to do and what I do are the same thing. That the Torah just brings out of me that lifestyle that I know is best for me. And it brings out a character from me that is so beautiful. You know why we have no symbols on Shavuos? Because we're the symbols. We are the symbols. We are the living embodiment of the Torah. I don't need a piece of cake shaped like a Torah. I don't need 2 popsicle sticks with a fruit by the foot wrapped around it and say, oh, I'm eating the Torah. I'm living the Torah. I'm a walking, breathing Torah scroll. I'm an embodiment of the Torah, not only in its deeds, but in its very essence. And therefore, when I stand up on Shavuos, I am the symbol of Shavuos. And that's why Shavuos, Purim, and Shabbos are connected to each other. Because they have a very special link. Shabbos is the day the Torah was given. It was one of the 3 days, the 3 concepts we celebrate every Shabbos. If you notice, every Shabbos we say a different Shemona Esrei. We say Friday night one Shemona Esrei, Shabbos morning a different one, and Shabbos afternoon a different one. We never do that. We say the same Amidah, the same Shemona Esrei every single day of the year. On a weekday, and then on Yontif we say the same one every Yontif, and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the same one. But then comes Shabbos, we say 3 different ones. Friday night talks about creation of the world. Shabbos is about God creating the world and resting. Shabbos morning, we talk about the Torah, because that was the whole purpose of creation. And then Shabbos afternoon, we talk about the Yom Shekulei Shabbos, the day that's going to be completely Shabbos. We talk about Yom Mashiach, Messianic times. Because there are 3 celebrations. One of the celebrations of Shabbos is a celebration of Torah. And that is the celebration of Shavuos, and that is a celebration of Purim, which was a reacceptance of the Torah. On all of those days, it centers around the Torah and the completeness of our existence. When we stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, we answered God. We said, Naaseh v'nishma. We said, we will do and we will listen. We will become. We won't just naaseh, we won't just do, but v'nishma, we'll let it wash through our bodies. We'll let it become a part of ourselves. It'll be the definition of who we are. The Torah will read as our biography. It'll read as the description of our lives and of the kinds of people that we've become. And that's why this parsha is called Bracha and Klala. Because it's our choice to use this Torah and to fill our lives with bracha, or to disconnect from this Torah and to disconnect from God and fill our lives with klala. And that's why we read it before Shavuos. Shetich l'shana, let the year end, let the weakness go, banish it from our lives, push it out of our existence, and now stand on Shavuos ready to make a brand new acceptance. An acceptance not just of what to do, but an acceptance of what to become. And that's the celebration of Shavuos. And that's the power of this week's Parsha, of preparing ourselves by reminding ourselves it's not just what you do, it's who you become. You know, we had an incredible week this week of Torah, learning Pirkei Avos, all the Torah that we learned together. It was a very difficult week. It was a week Klal Yisrael was in Shiva. And we talked a lot about Nechama, about comfort. And I had a thought in the middle of the week that what about giving Nechama, what about giving comfort, paying a Shiva call to the Ribbon Shalom, who, though he made a decision to call these children home, he knows how much pain we're in, and he's in pain also. And what's the proper nechama for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Living a life of bracha. Living a life and strengthening our life of living with the values and ideals of the Torah and bringing ourselves closer to Him. We should continue to be a nachas to Him. We should continue to be a comfort. And Shetich L'Shana, let the year end and get out of here. Escape. Get rid of it. Klal Yisrael, all of its curses. And our lives should be filled with bracha, with increase, with stronger and stronger connection to Hashem as we become the amazing, incredible people that Hashem believes in and knows that we could become. Have a wonderful, beautiful Shabbos, everyone. And we should know from no more tsar, know from no more pain. And just hear Besuros Tovos, beautiful, wonderful things as our life marches forward.